All right. I didn't know I was going to be doing this until about 9:45. So this is going to be another part of my discombobulation. Anybody feeling that way lately? Right? It means, if you don't know that, if you don't use that long term, disoriented, a little confused, upset, don't know exactly whether I'm coming or going, and generally just a bit of a mess. I've been feeling this way for a while, so it's not surprising that I would kind of draw some more of that into my life, right? So what I was going to do the meditation. Thank you so much, Ms. Cheryl. And I was going to do it after the storm. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Now, there's an obvious reason that we're talking about after the storm right now. We've just had a couple of hurricanes come through. There's the build-up to all of that. There's the preparation, there's the shopping, there's watching the predictions, maybe even packing up and evacuating. There's going through the actual storm. There's going through all of those steps that we take as we come back out of it. When can I go out? There's stepping out afterwards and finding out how we stand, and then checking on our friends and finding out how they stand. There's compassion for those that have been most affected. And so I think one of the first things I'd like to do this morning is, all of us know some people that were affected by this storm in some way, right? We've been seeing them. Let's just make a little space and call out names into this space of just holding the people we know that were impacted by either of these storms, like all of Asheville, right? So take a moment. Just doesn't have to be in any kind of order, just anyone you would like held in a space of knowing that everyone is held in the beautiful space that we sometimes call God's arms. Everyone is receiving the support, the supplies, the love that they need. Names? Catherine? These names spoken into this space where powerful love lives are boosted and encouraged and held in a new way simply by our decision to name and claim their good. Okay. Some of us had to wait a long time for the power to come on. The center got it yesterday. Pam, I heard, got it yesterday sometime. You got power? Did Candy ever get power? This morning. Okay. Huh? Okay. There was a lady that's leaving Florida because she can't stand the stress of the storms. Now, she hasn't had any major damage. She lives on the coast, and she's made it through these last two without any major damage. And she said she can't stay here anymore. And why is that? Because the fear that she holds around this has overwhelmed her. And apparently she doesn't have a resource to lean into when that fear comes in. And it occurs to me, we have all kinds of storms in our lives. These are just physical representations that bring it home to us in a different way, because the news can go and cover it and look at it and say, this thing has happened. But we're all having storms in our lives off and on, right? Our relationships can go from sunny and beautiful to stormy. And then sometimes they can become damaging. We're going to probably hear about that at women's group today. Right? Our finances can go through the same process, right? They can go from sunny to stormy to recovery. Our health, I've been playing with that one, right? If not everybody knows, Paul had open heart surgery as we returned from a trip, and has been recovering from that, right? Those are storms that come into our life in some form or fashion. We have to know how we're going to step in and deal with those. It happens to our decisions. We have decisions we make that can lead us up and down and all through storms. So what is in common about getting to, going through, and finally arriving after the storm? What are the common factors that play in to how we prepare for, deal with, and come back out of the storms that hit our lives, even if we've been doing Science of Mind since, when the heck was that? 1984? Is that long? Is it that long? Oh my God. I've been doing this a long time, and there's still ups and downs. There's still that opportunity to see where your faith stands. There's still that opportunity to check in and say, what are the steps I need to go through if I don't automatically stand in the space I mean to stand in? Anybody else have this challenge? You mean, well, I know all this stuff, it's great, I should be fine, and then the next thing you know, you're in the middle of words I'm not supposed to say on the stage. Right? Deep stuff. Right? So we get here, and we got to have our tools, and we got to have our way of thinking to help us get back on track. I mean, I got to tell you, if I was over there on the coast and I came out and I saw the tornadoes, right? I saw roofs blown off. You know, that's disconcerting, right? But have you ever had another experience where your real roof was on, but you still felt like your life roof had blown away? Stuff was leaking in, pouring in that you didn't want there? That's a good giggle. that one had some behind it, right? So we've got to keep the roof over our heads and our confidence in the roof in a lot of situations that have nothing to do with wind and weather. We just went through our basics last week, and I'm out of notes, guys. I only found out about this. I'm past the notes, so I'm just winging. Well, you know, I only had 45 minutes to even, during which time I was just kind of like, oh, what? I was supposed to do meditation this morning, and it was going to be after the storm. I was all ready for that. But, you know, what do you do when you find yourself at any time with a storm coming or upon you? Maybe that's what we need to talk about today. What are our resources? What do we dig in? Huh? Mm-hmm.
And we're not fully prepared. We know something could come and it hits us. And I think we have to resort back to that mental toughness, that resiliency, that overcoming adversity and obstacle, right? Mm-hmm. And come to realize that we just can't give up, we can't quit, right? We can't surrender. We have to keep on moving forward one step at a time. That step may be, we have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Because the other option is to give up, to quit, right?
Right.
And that can't happen.
And one of the ways we do.
And do these and continue to live life and be blessed for what we have and not for what we lost.
Great. Thank you. What resources we have to do that step, to do the moving on, to see what's good? Treatment. Does everybody know what a treatment is? How Anybody? Better. Who has not been here long enough to go, oh, I know what that means? Okay. So, great. Well, a treatment is our name for a positive prayer. That's all it is. It's prayer. But it is said from the aspect that we expect an answer because we know what we live in. We live within that which knows and does all good. And so instead of begging, oh, please, maybe do something nice for me, or let's make a trade, God, I'll do this if you'll do that. It is something we do that is done with total expectation that all that needed to happen was that we need to accept our good. The good's there. It's all around us. And what we're doing is, there's a 5-step procedure, which you just ignore after you learn it. But when you're learning, the first thing we do is identify, and I did one. I did a treatment up here in that prayer earlier. First thing I did was think about, what is God? What do I know about God? Right? God is love, joy, all power. It's what you need in the moment. Sometimes it's abundance, right? So I'm focusing and letting myself get out of that daily rut and the goods and the bads and get lifted up. And I get there, and then I remember I am of that. I'm created by it. It operates in, through, and as me. I am the avenue by which God appears and is experienced on this earth. And you are the way God shows up for me as well, right? So we're all in it. And then I state what I'm after. Now that may change from day to day. Right now, I'd like to have perfect, wonderful words that strike a perfect chord in each and every one of you. Somewhere in this talk, you hear something that's really important, that really sinks home and makes a shift and a change in how you live your life, in what you expect to happen from this moment forward. That would be something I want today. Somebody else may need the water out of their house, right? I need that to happen. I need the support. I need the love. I need the care. And I have it. And that's the big difference between our prayers, besides this first part of recognition, is we claim it knowing it's already ours. We might just be blocking it out, right? And I'm going to rid my mind of any thought that this can't be my experience, this perfection and wonder that I know God has intended for me, even when I'm wading through water. Even when I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to get a roof on my house, there we are, still in God's care. And how that transpires can happen differently for those who believe there's good coming and those that are expecting nothing, right? It's us that has to open to it. It's there. And then I give thanks and I let it go. We call that a 5-step. That's a prayer treatment. And we are accepting the good. Because the only place that's not happening already is in our own thoughts. It surrounds us, and we let it in or we don't. We have the experience we want to have. Our concept of hell here is something of our own making. It's whenever we're separating ourselves from our good. Right? Okay, now, where was I? What was I talking about? Yes? Yes. Indeed. Anybody need help getting over the storm? That's a good point. Why don't we just ask? We all got through? Yeah. We've come through it well, I take it. And then, that's one of the things. Maybe with these hurricanes. What was that? Oh, it was Rita. Back after we had the terrible storm in New Orleans, everybody moved to Texas. And then Rita came along, same year, later on, and was headed for all of them. They were going to go to Houston and get them all that had fled from New Orleans. That was the feeling, the sense. And a lot of prayer happened around that. And I believe that much prayer, somebody had to get hit, sadly, but it went through a very low populated area. These, these are experiences we have. So I think, though, that the important thing about going through this kind of storm is that we're there for one another, too, right? We are going to help. What's other storms in your life? So we've had a real storm. There's other storms in life. There's emotional storms, right? They were talking about that. Relationships cause all kinds of storms. Finances cause all kinds of storms. Any one of those, our health, and those are actually we say pretty much everything that happens to us in this world falls under health, finances, relationships, and guidance, our decision making, needing guidance in what we do. Pretty much everything that happens to us is going to fall into one of those categories, right? So that's when you get to that body of that treatment work, spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, what we call it, that's what's going to fall in there, those things. But you don't, I'm looking at all your faces and I'm thinking, we have resources besides God. We have resources that are God. Maybe that's the better way to say it. When I'm praying for these things, there's a whole room full of people here that might very well be an avenue through which I receive some good. Right? I receive a lot of good from this one over here. Right? And I think he gets some back. But God operates, through all this stuff. We're part of the operation. It's not, how do I say? It's not really magical how God works, and yet it is, right? It's not really magical. Things twist and turn just a little to bring the right people and the right circumstances and the thing you need because you have confidence that that's how it's going to happen. Because you've said your prayers and you've opened yourself up and said, there's something better. Because, when we start limiting it by what we know and can think of, that's the limited life. When we're trying to ask God to do what we can think of to get done, instead of opening it up to that one that is able to bring it in incredible new ways, magical ways. Not magic, but it appears magic to us because we've been thinking in our little limited boxes. What can I do? What can my little family unit do all by itself out here in the mad world? But it's not that. It's all good surrounding us all the time, just desiring to get into our lives. And we're blocking it. You ever thought about, the good that is God, the good that is meant for us is all around us all the time. And the avenues to get to it are myriad. And the biggest thing we got to open is our own belief that it can come to us in all kinds of interesting ways. And in very interesting timing, and that's something, getting down to real core teachings here. So you do the prayer. It's immediate. You don't put a time frame on it, it's now. But it didn't show up immediately. You keep working on it. Maybe things have to fall into place. I want to sell my house, for instance. I'm going to bring me the perfect buyer. Okay, well, somebody somewhere who's the perfect buyer for the house has to do the thing that causes them to need to move, et cetera, right? So there may be pieces falling into place that we don't see immediately that answer our prayer, but the answer is actually immediate. We just keep going to keep our minds open because a tendency we have is to question what we just said. I did this magnificent prayer. Or I went to see my minister or one of my practitioners, and we had this magnificent prayer. Now, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Right? And we immediately negate the openness. There we had it. So we have to keep doing it. Well, part of the reason we may need to pray on for a while before we see the result is because we've got to get ourselves opened up far enough to let the good in and let it stay in instead of passing through and back out again as we go back to thinking it's all up to us. I have to figure out what to do. I have to go back to all the things I ever learned in my life, and I have to make it happen. Instead of, I can sit back and receive the wonderful good that God has intended for me, because why else would I be here except to receive this wonderful good and live the life I'm intended to live? We have some people in the room, they're looking at me right now, we have people with stoles on. We have some of us that aren't wearing stoles, but we're called practitioners. Do you know what practitioners are? Do any of you know what all that means? Most of you probably, well, you should. Okay, so not everybody probably has heard just basics we've got available in our organization. A practitioner has been through a number of years of training and testing and continues to stay licensed and up to date to pray in the affirmative, positive way that we teach on behalf of others, right? So when you can't see it for yourself, and the hardest thing is to see our own good, right? Isn't that it? Isn't that the hardest person to believe actually has all this good going on is ourselves? I can see it for you, Guy. I can see it for you. I see perfect working here. But then I got this problem, right? We do that. So a practitioner's job is to see it with you. Now again, just like your own prayers, it can get you all boosted up, and then you go back and question it and go back into and maybe you got to work on that a while till you get more lifted up overall. But these are people that clearly see how the universe operates, that it's for you and for your good, and just state that into a very receptive universe. Here is the truth about this situation. I know it, and believe me, practitioners know with conviction, because we've experienced stuff, we've experienced healings, we've experienced amazing outcomes, we've experienced things going on. I'll share one with you that maybe is easy. I was on my way to Asilomar. Asilomar is a place in Monterey, California, out on the peninsula. Yeah, it's a state park there, and Science Mind folk have been going out there for a long time. I mean, Ernest Holmes himself spoke there. And they used to have an annual retreat out there. So I'm going out, and I'm going because I'm graduating for the second time from practitioner studies. I did it once way back in the 80s, kind of lapsed because I got out of somewhere else in the country and there wasn't a lot of support. I let it go. I went through the whole training again. I was going to be getting that finalized and taking my entrance interviews to get into ministerial school. So it's important. And I get out to the airport just to get going from Birmingham, where we lived at the time, and my plane is delayed. And I had this really short layover, although it was on the same airline, and I thought, well, if they made it short, it must be all right. A short layover in Salt Lake. And we got later and later. But I was so imbued at the time. I'm studied up, I'm going out to do this. And I'm like, I couldn't even say a prayer. I just couldn't get words. It's just like, it's okay. It's okay. So we finally left, like an hour late. There had only been the half-hour layover. And we get to Salt Lake City, and we come off our plane, and there's the little people standing down there going, and we're hollering out our flight numbers, and it's at this gate, this gate, this gate. And I give mine, she says, yours is left. I said, where did it leave from? And she told me. I said, all right. And I'm going, and there's a guy I meet later is following me, because he said, you look so confident. I figured you must know something. So I get to the gate where it had left, and there's a little confab of 3 people. And I walk up and I said, I'm supposed to be on the plane that left from here. And she's like, so, well, as a matter of fact, we had to bring it back because there was a mismatch on the luggage. It's out at the end of though you're gonna have to walk all the way. And they walked me out. And this is a little plane. There's a guy, the pilot this is the nose of the plane. He's like, I said, hang on, my luggage is on the way. And I got on the plane, and I and my luggage arrived in Monterey. And my luggage was the first off, because it was the last on. And so it worked out. That is working with such absolute confidence that your good is there for you, that you can fix flight patterns in a moment. And it doesn't always happen that fast, right? Well, It happens that fast, we don't always experience the fast manifestation. Okay, but this is how this can work in your life. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. And when you know it for yourself, it's great. And if somebody else knows it and you get to see it, peace and work together. And I got way off the whole storm thing, but what, sorry, we're going where we're going. This teaching, when I came into it, was what I already knew. But I'd never had words for it. I'd never had an official organization around it. I didn't know there was anyone else but me that thought that way, that questioned the standards of Christianity in the same way I did. Of now, how can it be for me and not for those guys over there? How can it work in this country and not in that country just because they look at God a little bit different way? All of these things were not working for me. So I had it in me already. And this is where I walked in 84. All that long ago, and found somebody saying what I already knew. It just wasn't codified for me. It wasn't laid out clearly for me. It wasn't supported by reason. Ernest Holmes hadn't come into my life yet with all of this. He's wordy, but he's trying to say it so many different ways that it's in there right for one or the other of us somewhere in here. And then there was many, many simpler books, but there wasn't somebody that had it right there in front of me, to say this is how it works and why it works. It works. It's working whether you know about it or not. When you know about it and you learn how to operate within it by your expectation and statement and claim, life changes. Right? It's getting on toward time we're supposed to wrap up. I'm going to wrap up. Anything that really just needs to be said today or known? It's working. And experience it. Yeah. Yeah. All right.